And I think this is what a lot of people get confused is that because Airbnb, like obviously it has to do with real estate, like obviously we're talking about properties. The thing that people don't realize, and I think this is kind of what you're saying, if I'm wrong, is that like it's not really a real estate business in the sense that unless you're actually buying the properties, which some people do, but I know that you're doing the arbitrage model that you've done, it's you miss out on those actual like nitty gritty, like true real estate things of like actually acquiring something and selling it and like what it's like to work with buyers and sellers and like really negotiating on stuff. Because what Airbnb is, it's more of a hospitality business, just packaged as real estate.
All right, welcome to the podcast. In today's episode, we're gonna be talking to Andrew. Andrew is a land investor who transitioned over from actually doing Airbnb to starting a land flipping business. We're gonna talk about why he made that change, the advantages that he saw in land flipping for his longer real estate journey, and also how he was able to flip a piece of land in only a week and a half. This is gonna be an amazing action-packed episode. So if you're thinking about getting started in land, you're already started, or you're very far on your land investing journey, this could be a very helpful video for you. There's a lot of action-packed golden nuggets in here, so make sure you stay until the end so you can get all the information. Let's dive in.
So yeah, I know we were talking a little bit before, but let's crack into this thing. So obviously we've known each other for a little bit. I know you've got into land. I've helped you out with that. For the people that don't know you, can you give kind of like a brief background on who you are and what you've done?
Yeah, so my name is Andrew Ibarra. I actually started with Max maybe about 2 years ago. And I own a corporate housing company where we run multiple Airbnbs that produces over 6 figures. And then from there, through Max, I also got into buying and selling land. And that's been the new venture that I've been working on at the moment.
That's awesome. Yeah, you're crushing it. I guess my question for you is, I'm curious about, obviously, you're doing well on the Airbnb side. So what was it that attracted you to add land into your portfolio?
So it was the aspect of real estate. I've always been, I've always had a passion for real estate, never knew how to start. When everyone thinks of real estate, you think of, rental properties or the BRRRR method, buying and flipping or stuff like that. And I never had the capital at a young age to get into buying a rental property or buying a home to fix it up and sell it. So I was looking for new avenues to take to get me into this space of real estate. And I first kind of touched it, got my feet wet with Airbnb, but I think land has been like the closest to, my goals of actually owning rental properties for the long term. And I think the land company kind of attracted me in that way. So that's kind of what got me started with it.
Well, what is it specifically about land that you feel like is a little bit closer to your goals compared to Airbnb? Because some of that Airbnb is bad. But obviously these are, pretty different things. You know what I mean?
Correct. Yeah. So Airbnb is, I wouldn't really consider it in the space of real estate. I think it kind of has its own like little niche. Whereas like when it comes to land, you're actually, following similar rules when it comes to real estate, working with real estate agents, going through the MLS, going through, just certain sites, learning about pricing these vacant lands to see if it'll be profitable to sell, negotiating with, cold calling and negotiating with potential sellers. And that's kind of what, it opened my mind to learning these methods. That way I can use this and tie it into, whatever next venture I go on with real estate.
Okay, that makes sense. And I think this is what a lot of people get confused is that because Airbnb, like obviously it has to do with real estate, like obviously we're talking about properties. The thing that people don't realize, and I think this is kind of what you're saying, if I'm wrong, is that like it's not really a real estate business in the sense that, unless you're actually buying the properties, which some people do, but I know that you're doing the arbitrage model that you've done, it's you miss out on those actual like nitty gritty, like true real estate things of like actually acquiring something and selling it and like what it's like to work with buyers and sellers and like really negotiating on stuff. Because what Airbnb is, it's more of a hospitality business, just packaged as real estate, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's more customer service rather than, like you said, buying and, working through those things.
100%. And for some people, like they freaking love customer service. I know that I don't. I know from our conversations, it's not, one of your favorite things, but I think that's important for people to think about, right? It's like when you're going to pick what to do, because obviously, like there's a million things you can do, right? You could do Airbnb, you could do land, you could wholesale, you could Section 8. You got to pick the right thing for you. And so it has to have the factors that are attractive of like, does this play into your long-term vision? And with, I know for a lot of people on Airbnb, it's like, well, if your long-term vision isn't building a hospitality business, then like maybe it's better to look into some other real estate things. I guess like my question for you though, because I know we've had other conversations, is I know that you've looked into other things outside of Airbnb and land. So why did you choose land as the next thing compared to, I don't know, like Section 8 or wholesaling or flipping houses, something like that?
Yeah, it's actually funny you bring that up because Section 8 and wholesaling is actually two of the big things that I was looking at before I even got into land.
Okay.
And I think what set it apart was one, working with you. We've like we said, we've spoken about that in the past.
Yeah.
But two, I think the saturation of wholesaling. I think when everyone thinks of real estate, the first thing they want to hop on is wholesaling. I mean, everyone
Yeah.
is doing wholesaling, whether it's with a mentor or trying to do it on your own. Everyone has their foot inside wholesaling, and even if you're just a normal real estate investor, you end up doing wholesaling. So it's like you have all these big time people that are into wholesaling, and buying and selling land is kind of that new business model that no one has really tapped into too much yet. And I feel it's very important to get into that early, and that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, that's a really good point you bring up, and this is where I think a lot of people they don't see it because they just haven't been in it long enough. So in any opportunity, in any business, right, whether it's real estate or something totally different, there's always a point in time where it's the easiest to get in, right? Because you have the least amount of competition. So we'll give you an example. You think about wholesaling. It's not that wholesaling doesn't work. It's just like really competitive right now, right? If you started wholesaling in the 80s, obviously I know you weren't alive then, but if you were hypothetically, right, well, you have a huge leg up on the competition because it was like this up and coming thing. And I think that's where land is at now, is that there's so few people doing it. Like by our estimation is about 3,000 people doing it nationwide, including myself and our clients and yourself. You compare that to wholesaling, there's like 5 million wholesalers, right? And so when you get into an industry that has less competition, that helps you get a leg up, right?
Correct. Yes.
100%. For you, what have you done so far in land? Like, talk to me about deals. Like, what is that looking like?
Yeah, so right now we're starting to ramp things up a bit. We are
Okay.
actually hiring. Actually tomorrow I have a large group interview with
Nice.
potential assistants to help me out through this process, just so
Okay.
we can start scaling this business to the numbers that we want. At the moment
Mhm.
we have 3 deals. Three deals that are locked up
Okay.
pending one of them. And then we have one that has been purchased and one that has been
Nice.
sold.
Nice. Okay. So walk me through those transactions. What was the one that's already been sold? Like, talk to me about like the ins and outs of that deal. Like for someone who has like no idea what a land deal would be like, can you explain like what happened on it?
Yeah, so this was actually funny story. This was actually my first ever lead that came through.
Nice.
My first time ever communicating with the seller, pitching or not pitching, but trying to sell him on
Yeah.
giving me his land, or purchasing his land, and it went well. We agreed to a number, and yeah, we had it signed. And down the line, after communicating with the realtor, we found out that it probably wasn't gonna go for what we expected.
Mm.
Had to renegotiate, didn't go well. The seller was actually very upset, and we let it
Yep.
sit for a month. We backed out of the deal. It sat for a month, no communication, no nothing. Reached back out to him at a different price point, actually a lower price point, and I kind of hit on the fact that this place has just been sitting there. It hasn't sold. He needs to sell it before the end of the year, because he
Mm.
mentioned the first time we spoke he needs to sell one piece of land every year. And he agreed to the new price point, and we got it signed, and it actually sold a week later.
Nice. What'd you sell it for?
We sold it for 40. We had it listed at 52,000. We got an
Okay.
offer at 42,000, and
Okay.
we told them we wanted 47, and they took it. So we sold it for 47,000.
Okay. And then what were you under contract for on it?
35,500.
35. Sold it for 47. So what'd you walk away with net after all fees?
So after all fees, we walked away with about $4,400. It was a
Nice.
double close.
Okay.
That sold
Nice.
quicker than we thought.
Can you explain that to me? Because a lot of people they don't know what a double close is.
Yeah, so a double close is when a seller kind of wants a higher price point that won't
Mm,
necessarily work for a flip, and meaning that the flip percentages between me and a investor is going to be, the profit split will be too low. So we do
yeah.
something called a double close where it allows well, you won't be splitting the profit, it'll be directly to you, and it allows you
Mm,
to make more on the deal. And how
okay.
that kind of looks is we'll pretty much pitch them on the fact that it's going to take us a little longer to get them at that price point that they want. And once they agree to the time frame that we give them, which is usually 90 days, we then have in our contract that we will be marketing it out during that
Okay.
time period. And when they sign it, they give us permission to do so. And we'll just list it on local MLS websites such as Zillow and Redfin.
Hmm.
And from there, when we get offers that come in, if we like one, we take it, and from there,
Okay.
it's an all-in-one transaction. The new buyer pretty much pays the full amount. It covers your debt to the original seller, and then you
Okay.
keep the remaining amount from whatever you had it sold for.
So how did you fund this? Did you use your own money, or like how did that work specifically?
So we actually use something called doubleclose.com where they'll
Okay.
actually fund it for a certain amount of hours. And pretty
Okay.
much what that looked like was, I think it was, they pretty much funded the 40, they paid the 35,500
Okay.
to that seller, and we waited. It took about 8 to 12 hours after that
Hmm.
before the new funds from the buyer came in.
Okay.
And once that came in, you obviously pay, you pay a fee to doubleclose.com for funding it for
Mm,
those few hours. And then, you just keep the rest. So it's actually a site that funds deals for specifically for double closing.
nice. Okay. So basically, you didn't use any of your money. You used other people's money, right?
Correct. Yeah. Never used a cent of my money.
100%. I think that's one of the most powerful things about land, and like people don't think about this enough, is that so in a lot of real estate things, like as you kind of mentioned earlier, like capital is usually the constraint, right? And so when a lot of people think of real estate, they want to like buy properties, right? They want to go buy multifamily, Section 8. The problem is though is that like if you're just starting off in real estate, most people they don't have like hundreds of thousands sitting aside that they can just put into properties. And so the issue is that it takes them a long time to scale to any measurable thing, right? Now, the thing about land is you sold that deal in how long?
A week.
A week.
Yeah.
That's nuts. So it was on the market for a week?
Yeah. About a
That's
week and
insane.
3 days. And then it took a week to close. But by the time we got everything signed, a week and like 3 days.
Damn, that's nuts. Okay. This is the point, and this is why there's two things on this. This is why it's so easy to get funding for land, is because when you have a good deal like you did, why would someone not want to fund that deal? Because they're going to get a return on their capital a lot quicker, and it's safer, right? Like there's less moving pieces. It's just land. There's no tenants to worry about. There's no houses, nothing like that. And additionally, a lot of people think land takes so long to sell. And for a lot of people who don't know what they're doing, it can. It could take them like 6, 12 months. So why do you think you're able to sell this so quickly?
So I think people, when it comes to land, there's a variety of uses for it that,
Mm,
normal, well, not normal, but just, average city people, I guess you can say, won't really
yeah.
look into. Most of these people are buying it whether you need it for lumber.
Okay.
Some people just buy it for hunting, depending on the state, if it has good hunting. Other people buy it because, the housing market's super expensive. Sometimes it comes out
Yeah.
cheaper to just build a small home on it. You never understand what the seller's mindset is behind buying it because there's a bunch of different reasons why they can buy it, like such as the
Mm,
ones I listed. And then you also have the investors that want to build large commercial properties if it's zoned for it, or just rental properties.
okay. So I guess like what was the process before you actually got the deal? Like how did you know that this was an area that you should work in, that it was going to be effective, and that it was going to sell quickly?
Yeah, so we actually analyzed the entire market or county, I should
Okay.
say, and
Yeah.
found out that average acre range was actually, hot. Like it was selling consistently every single year,
Okay.
and multiple properties every single year were selling it at a good price point. And from there,
Hmm.
we used that to kind of give us an idea of how much we would need to get it under contract for to sell
Okay.
it. We didn't really check into what it was zoned for in the sense of like, oh, what our average, what our buyer's going to be like. We didn't check
Yeah.
like, oh, it's going to be a lumber guy buying this.
Hmm.
But we just knew that that market was hot in terms of selling at that acre range
Okay.
for the price point that we got it for, and that acre range was 9 acres, so not too big, not too small.
When you say it was hot, like how did you know that that market was hot? Like what are the specific like statistics or metrics you were looking at to tell you like, okay, this is going to be a fast moving, hot market?
Yeah, so we actually looked at how long these properties were on the market for. Anything
Yeah.
over 90 days is unattractive to us. We want everything sold between 90
Okay.
days and sooner. And actually,
Mm.
when we ran our numbers, we saw that things were actually selling super quick in
Okay.
less than 90 days. And I think the numbers showed for that on our deal, as it sold in a week and 3 days.
Yeah.
And kind of how we did that is we went on Redfin, we
Okay.
downloaded all the properties that had sold within uh, a month, 3 months, six
Yep.
months, and a year. And
Mhm.
from there, we looked at the percentage rates of, what they were selling for, depending on what was pending on the market. And, we got super high percentage rates for even the 1 month, which is usually on average a bit lower. We noticed that it was
Yeah.
actually high.
Okay.
So showing that things were moving quick and things were moving, more recent. It wasn't like, it's been a year since something sold here. It's like, no, it's
Sure.
been a month since something has sold here. Even sooner, stuff were already, pending transactions when we were active.
That's awesome. Yeah, and the way that you did it's the way I always tell people to do it because the area that a lot of new land flippers go wrong at is they just try and get a deal anywhere they can, right? And so the problem is like they'll go to these areas of the country where it's like just worthless land. Like they'll think about like Nevada and Arizona. They get like quite literally like a desert square where there's like nothing out there. It's like a desert, and it's like those deals are easy to get because they don't hold a lot of intrinsic value. Like they're kind of worthless, so the sellers are like willing to let them go. But then they're super hard to sell, and they can take 6, 9, 12 months. So what you did is like you took the inverse approach. So before you even sent out the marketing, you found an area that was moving quickly, right?
Correct. Yeah. We found an area that was moving quick, and for example, in our case for our deal, it was actually someone that wanted to buy it for the lumber, as it was completely covered
Okay.
with trees. So, like I said, going into it, we didn't look into that aspect of who's going to be buying this. Is it going to be an investor to
Yeah.
build multifamilies? We knew it wasn't going to be because it was the property was actually landlocked. We actually got an easement with the seller that owned the front property.
Nice.
But it was covered in trees, and we knew it was going to be most likely used for lumber, or
Okay.
if someone just wanted to buy and hold the land, that's the other
Yeah.
use it could have been for.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the example of kind of how ours was sold off of.
That's
Because of
awesome.
that.
I'm not gonna make you give away the county. I know it's like you want to keep it to yourself. What state was it?
It was in North Carolina.
Okay, cool. Yeah, lumber's a big thing there. And like you don't know. What was another part of the process that helped? Like, did you use a realtor? Did you sell it on your own? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, it's like a good question. So we used a local realtor out there that's actually familiar with the area and works the
Okay.
area. So she was
Yeah.
able to give some awesome feedback in the case of like,
Mm.
hey, this is not a good area. This is a good area. Um,
Yep.
and she also had that knowledge of, sometimes, like for example, the easement. She had the knowledge of, hey, you know what, like you guys should go to this local, use this local person, in terms of attorneys, because he was actually able to build up the easement for us, and he actually closed the deal for us. So it was like a one-stop shop for everything.
That's awesome. Okay. I think some people who are new, they might not know, like, what is an easement?
Yeah, so an easement is pretty much, it grants you permission to access your property. So the way this property was formatted was there was property surrounding it. So there was
Okay.
legally no way to enter the property without
Okay.
communicating to, one of the owners in the front lot, and just saying
Yeah.
like, hey, can you grant me, I think ours was 35 feet. I'm not too sure.
Okay.
35-foot width to,
Yep.
or maybe a little less, to access our property. And he it didn't cost us anything. He actually just was like, yeah, just send me over the information and I'll sign
That's
off on
awesome.
the easement. And it was just a perfect straight shot road directly to our property
Man, that's
that made it
crazy.
legal.
Yeah, and like, okay, so you basically made 4 grand like a week and a half. Now, obviously, I know you have some bigger deals you're working on, which we'll talk about in a second. But this is the thing I always tell people is like you're gonna have some deals that are small, some that are bigger, but everything will average out. And as long as you're following that process, when you average it out, end of the year, you should be doing about $10,000 of profit per deal, right? But the cool thing is it sounds like you didn't have to do that much work on this property because you had someone selling it for you.
Correct. Yeah, I didn't really
Yeah.
do much besides talk to the seller, get it locked up, and then after that, it was just just checkups, like, hey, how's everything going? And that's about it. I
Okay.
didn't really do nothing.
So if you think about like the total time that you put into the deal between like talking to the seller, or maybe like talking to the title company or closing attorney, how many hours would you say in total you put into it?
Oh, probably less than like 3.
Are you serious?
Yeah, just talking to people. Yeah, I didn't really talk to anyone. Like, I mean, it was
Okay.
just quick
Damn.
checkup calls.
So you spent 3 hours roughly, made about 4 grand.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, most of it was, let's see, I had maybe about total of 8 calls with the seller.
Mm.
Just 2 of them were big time calls, just
Yeah,
getting,
yep.
negotiating the deal. The other ones were just checkups, letting them know like, hey, everything's going well. Maybe less than 8, maybe like 5. And each of those
Okay.
calls was less than 30 minutes. So it's probably like
Yeah.
10, 15 minutes each. Then the title company, it was mainly email communication, which
Okay.
took like 2 minutes out of my day, just to send
Mm.
the email and get updates. And then talking to my realtor was another 10 minutes. Spoke to her maybe about 5 times. So yeah,
Okay.
probably about 3 hours if I were to
That's
estimate.
awesome. Well, good job. Another thing I think is super key that you hit on that most people don't think about is that when you first got this deal and you saw it was landlocked, right, surrounded by other parcels, a lot of people would like just throw that away and be like, oh, I can't do anything with it. Why did you not just throw it away?
Yeah, I mean the seller was open to selling it, so we saw an
Okay.
opportunity, and he had actually a super high interest in selling it.
Yeah.
So it would kind of be dumb of us to not find out more and sell it, like you were mentioning in terms of uh, the profits and all that. Like, on average we make usually 10,000 a deal, and that's usually what we look for. But
Hmm.
it would be dumb of us to not take this offer for less.
Yeah.
So yeah, so pretty much we just thought like, hey, let's go into it and see if we can get it for the right price, and if we can, we'll do it. If we can't, we'll walk away. And the seller, like I said, was open to selling and actually really wanted to sell, and he took pretty much all our offers on it, and we just moved it.
Yeah, and I think that's what's really important is that like you're not the market, so you don't know what people are going to buy. And I always tell people like if you can get under contract, just be aggressive, get it on the market and see, because these things happen where you have properties that you might think, okay, maybe this isn't the best deal, but someone actually wants it, like the guy wanted it for lumber. Now what you did that's really cool is you you added value in the sense that like you got an easement, but you didn't have to spend money to do that. You just reached out to the neighbor and he was willing to grant it. And so essentially like you took like a diamond in the rough. And a lot of people they kind of skip over this type of stuff, right? And so I actually think that's a very creative way to get deals is because a lot of other people in land, if they saw a landlocked piece, they're like, I'm just going to skip it. What you did though is you knew that that seller had high motivation, so you said, let me, make lemonade out of lemons essentially, and you put 3 hours of work in, you got an easement, got this thing closed, made 4 grand. Means your hourly rate's like, over a grand an hour. I mean, pretty good.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so I know you said you had some other deals in the pipeline you're working on. Can you kind of like briefly explain, what's going on with those deals?
Yeah, so I actually have 2 more deals. One of them we actually just purchased,
Okay.
and that one's actually going to be listed soon. That one is in, what state is it in? That one's in the state of Michigan,
Okay, cool.
and that one's completely cleared, flat land, perfect for residential property. So that's ideally the investor that's going to be purchasing that, or just the normal person that'll be purchasing
Yeah.
it. It's going to be most likely to build a home on it.
Okay.
The other one is taking a bit of more of a process, but it's actually a 5 parcel deal. So
Nice.
the seller was in a tough position and needed to sell her land, and
Okay.
she actually sold it all to us. And there was some complications with it in terms of legally.
Yeah.
So we've just been working with multiple attorneys, trying to get this whole legal situation sorted out. That way we can legally purchase the land off of her.
Okay.
But yeah, that one's under contract. That one's good to go. It's just a waiting period to get everything good to go,
Yeah.
so we can list it.
Okay. I have a few questions. What are the numbers on these two deals?
Yeah, so on the one in Michigan,
Hmm.
we purchased it for 29,000.
Okay.
That one's we actually have a funder who actually funded it and paid
You
the
didn't use
twenty
your own
nine
money.
thousand. None of my own money.
Okay.
This
Okay.
funder funded it for us, and he's covering any fees, closing costs, everything. So yeah, my money won't be touched at all. And
Nice.
from there, we expect to sell it I'm not sure. I don't have the exact numbers on me in front of me, but I know for a fact we expect to profit 10,000 off of that on my end, and my funder
Okay,
expects to profit, a good amount as well.
that's
And
awesome.
then on the other deal is in North Carolina as well. That one,
Yep.
like I said, it's six parcels or
Okay.
5 parcels, sorry. And that one we actually expect to make about a little over 20,000 on all of them.
Nice.
Total on all of them.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we average that out. So you got one for 10, another for 20,000 profit. This was four, so 34,000 in profit divided by three. It's like basically 11K in profit. So like that shakes out to that kind of $10,000 profit, per deal number essentially.
Correct. Yes.
Interesting. Okay, cool. So I know earlier you were talking about you have a group interview coming up. So like, what's next? I know you're scaling. Like, what are you doing specifically to grow your land flipping business?
Yeah, so when we spoke in the beginning, I do have that other business that, it does take up a bit of time. Sometimes it
Okay.
it can. So
Hmm.
we want to ultimately grow our land company, and what that's kind of looking like is we want to send out more mail, and that's kind of how we, get in contact with these potential sellers.
Okay.
So the more mail you send, the more leads you can get.
Yep.
So that's why we're looking to hire a virtual assistant to take on
Okay.
that process of, scrubbing these deals to see if, this is a good piece of land, or, maybe it's not. It's just recently sold about a year ago. They're going to probably want a lot of money,
Mm.
or, maybe it's not because it's in a flood zone, or, it's landlocked. And yeah, so they're going to be taking on that process. That way it allows us and gives us more time to send out more mail to get to more
Okay.
sellers. And thus by doing so, it, allows us to profit more because we'll be getting more
S-
deals.
How many mailers are you having to send to get a deal under contract?
So ideally, on average, it's about 5,000 just to get one deal.
Okay.
So I mean, if we send, a little more, we can, like, if we send 10,000, we have the potential for getting two deals. But
Okay.
for example, my first deal or my first mailer for when I sent out 5,000 got me one, but
Yeah.
my second mailer when I sent out 5,000 got me two. So on average, it's usually one, but you have the potential of getting several off of
Well,
5,000 mailers.
that brings up a good point that we should talk about, right? So you sent 10,000 out total and you got three deals.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so that's how many mailers per deal roughly?
That's about a little over one mailer. Oh no, yeah,
Well, 10,000 divided by three is what? It's like 3,300.
yeah, correct.
Okay, so right now you're currently running about 3,300 mailers per deal, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, that's good. And so what I always tell people is like you should get a deal every 2,500 to 5,000. It'll flex, and like the difference really comes down to like you targeting the right properties and the right sellers, and then also what you did, which was awesome, is like having a good follow up, right? Because you might initially reach out to someone and it might not go the way that you want, but then you circle back. So if you're getting a deal every 3,300 mailers or so, like that's a really healthy statistic, right? So and how much are you spending like per mailer, like roughly, like how much does a mailer cost? Like one piece of mail.
Oh, one piece of mail is like a few cents.
Okay. Like,
So
it's like a dollar. Like, what is it?
yeah, I think one piece of mail is like 30, 35, 40 cents, but we buy them in bulk, so it comes
Okay.
out to a little more. So for example, we purchased 15,000 mailers for
Okay.
$3,000, and we already paid that off just on selling one piece of land
That's
and
nuts.
profited still.
Okay. And then obviously you have the postage too. So when you think about the mailer and the postage, how much you spending like to get one piece of mail out?
Oh, it's probably still under a dollar. It's probably like 80 cents. To send the mail out is like another 40 cents, I think, from when I last
Okay.
looked at it. So yeah, it's probably like 80 cents to purchase one piece of mail and send out one piece of
Yep.
mail. It's like 80 cents total, probably.
Yeah. And then I know obviously when you buy stuff in bulk, you can get it cheaper. Like usually when you get the bulk packages, you can get around like 60, 65 cents between like the actual letter and with postage. So
Correct.
man, that's crazy. So just so like this is important for you to know too. Go a little higher level here. So it's like let's say you sent out 3,300 letters, and let's say it costs 65 cents because you bought stuff in bulk. So you basically spent $2,100 in like actual money, and then if your average deal, like we just talked about, is 10 grand, you spend about 2,100, you make 10 grand. That is a 4.7x return on your ad spend. That's that's really important. And a lot of people in a land space, like they don't track their numbers. When you have a return on ad spend that's a 3x or above, that's where you can run a very highly profitable business, like a 50, 60% plus, margin business, like net, and you can scale hard because, I mean, if every time you put, you know, a dollar in and you get $4.7 back, it's like, well, why would you not just put as many dollars as you can to that machine and just keep doing it? You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's
Okay.
exactly our model behind it. That's why, we're taking on this virtual assistant to send out those more mailers for more deals and more profit.
So how many mailers are you looking to start sending a month now? Because you've done
So
5,000, 5,000. What do you want to go to?
so we're actually gonna be the second we hire, we're gonna slowly increase. So we'll go
Okay.
from 10,000 the first month, and the second month, depending on how they do, we're just gonna straight start pushing 20,000 mailers.
20,000 mailers a month?
Correct. Yes.
Damn. Okay. Wow. So you start sending out that type of mail, how many deals do you think you'll be able to get from something like that?
Let's do the math on it. So probably about 8 to 10 deals from that average 10,000. So
That's crazy. Okay. So where do you want to take this to? Like numbers wise, actual money, revenue a month, where do you want to scale to?
yeah, we want to, in terms of revenue, we want to break 7 figures. So we for sure
Okay.
want to hit the 1 million mark um, within our second year.
Okay.
And that's exactly what we're pushing for, which is why we're going to be sending out much more mail and
Yeah.
slowly increasing and hiring. The more people we're able to bring into our team allows us more time and to pretty much move this mail and communicate with
Okay.
these sellers.
I think it's a good question, and you're obviously a little more advanced than people who are just starting out. But how do you know when it's the right time to hire your first person, which is going to be like a virtual assistant?
I think for us it was in terms of when we truly understood what we were doing, when
Yeah.
we understood the legal backgrounds behind everything in terms of how certain states operate, but also the whole process of it. I'm not going to make someone do something that I don't know how to do proficiently.
Mm,
And we got to a point where we understood what we were doing, and we had a system of how to do it quickly. And from there, it was a matter of we want to grow this company,
yeah.
and to do so, we don't have the time or the manpower to pretty much do so. I don't have, time to be sending out 20,000 mailers a month, plus scrubbing it, plus doing all this other
Okay.
communication with people. So it was a matter of having the knowledge of making sure we knew what we were doing, and
Hmm.
the need for more time. So that when we got to that point, we are like, okay, it's time to hire someone, and that's
That's
exactly what
awesome.
we're doing right now.
Okay. Cool. Well, I think we're gonna sign off there. This was awesome, dude. I had fun chatting with you. Um, I'm excited to see you crush it.
I appreciate it.